Hi, this is Gates McFadden, and I played Dr. Beverly Crusher on Star Trek The Next Generation, and you're listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I am your host, Matthew Kaplowitz, and in this episode we are continuing to talk all about Star Trek Picard Season 3, the final season of Picard. And joining us today is someone who has a true inside scoop on what's been happening behind the scenes on that show. And not only that, but this week's guest has somehow managed to dive even deeper into the Star Trek universe than she already was, and that's a pretty impressive feat. You've previously seen her hanging out in sickbay aboard the Enterprise, but today she is joining us once again on Trek Untold to talk all things Star Trek, and that is Gates McFadden. Gates has played Dr. Beverly Crusher across all 7 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation, and has now shown up in Star Trek Picard. Previously, you've seen Dr. Crusher hanging out in sickbay aboard the Enterprise, but these days she's now hanging out in her home studio working on her new podcast. And in fact, the very first time Gates visited Trek Untold was to promote the first season of Gates McFadden InvestiGates, Who Do You Think You Are? This show has been produced by the Nacelle Company, who has been doing amazing things with Star Trek and the world of nerddom in general, and they're now doing podcasts. And Gates McFadden InvestiGates has just launched their second season only a few weeks ago, and it's been a very, very impressive season so far. If you're unfamiliar with Gates' podcast, it's basically similar to Trek Untold, but she really takes a deep dive with a lot of these folks that she's basically known for years, whether it be from conventions, or she worked together with them, or in some cases, folks she's really never talked to before, who are all within the Star Trek universe. And it's not just, getting inside scoop behind the scenes stuff, it's really just getting to know the people behind the roles. Season 2 kicked off in a huge way with William Shatner being her first guest, and since then, she's had folks from all different iterations of Star Trek. Besides Shatner from the original series, she had Rosalind Chow and Alexander Siddig from DS9. She's had Tony Newsom and Jack Quaid from Lower Decks. She is going all over the place with this podcast, talking to every single part of the Star Trek universe. No stone is left unturned, and it's really a must-listen show. But only, of course, after you finish listening to Trek Untold that week. In addition to Gates McFadden InvestiGates, she's also been part of the Center Seat docu-series that Nacelle Company has put out. And that was an amazing, epic saga that spanned the entire creation of Star Trek from day one all the way through into the new iterations. It's one of the most amazing docu-series we will ever get about Star Trek, and that is available on the History Channel and it's streaming on a bunch of other places as well. But the Center Seat also has a book that just came out recently. That's what I've got right here next to me. This is the Center Seat 55 Years of Star Trek. And it was compiled by Peter Holstrom. And what the book essentially is it takes all those many, many, many interviews that they did with all the folks who created Star Trek and who are part of making Star Trek happen, and compiled it into different sections, all about the different stages and versions of Trek that happened. So essentially what you're getting is the entire story of Star Trek told from the start all the way to where we are today by the people who saw it and made it happen. Highly recommend the book, highly recommend the series. If you haven't seen the series, definitely track it down, and then pick up the book for even more great stuff. There's so many really amazing tales, and this podcast is called Trek Untold, but this book is equally filled with untold stories, and likewise, so was the docu-series itself. And if you'd like to pick up the series also, it's going to be available on DVD very soon too. So I know I've just ran down a lot of different projects that Gates has been involved in or working on herself. I'm going to have links for all of them, of course, in the show notes, so you can check out her podcast, the book, and the docu-series in whatever ways you want to check it out. So before we get into things, I do want to remind everybody, if it's your first time checking out Trek Untold, please make sure to follow us on social media at Instagram, at Twitter, at Facebook, and also now at TikTok. Yeah, I got a TikTok, but don't worry, I won't be doing any Klingon dances or anything like that. But I will be posting all sorts of clips from the different interviews I've done here on that channel. So if you're on TikTok, check us out there too. And likewise, no matter where you're listening or watching this podcast, please make sure to subscribe to wherever it is so you can make sure you always get the latest episodes right away. And if you want to get these episodes even sooner, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/trekuntold. And thank you to my Patreon supporters for helping make this episode happen. And as a reward, of course, they get this episode early, as well as a bunch of other perks. One last thing before we do get into things, this episode is going to be audio only for the interview. So if you're watching on YouTube, just letting you guys know we did not do video for this. That's going to be the case for a lot of these Picard episode interviews. For you folks listening to the audio version, this won't matter anyway, so carry on. All right, so I think we've covered now all the disclaimers, all the social media tags, all that stuff, and we talked a little bit about some of the projects we're going to be discussing in this episode, so I think now it is about time we join with Gates McFadden and hear all about what she has to say. Because Gates, I want to know who you think you are. So let's check in now with the amazing Gates McFadden. Computer, access interview file. Gates McFadden, welcome back to Trek Untold. Excited to have you again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. A lot has happened since the last time we spoke, and we've got a lot of ground to cover today. And I do want to remind everybody that's listening right now, the first thing we're going to talk about here, your podcast, Gates McFadden InvestiGates, Who Do You Think You Are, has just come back for season 2. So congrats. You returned
Thank you.
a few weeks ago with William Shatner as your first guest, which is huge. And then you've had very diverse seasons so far. So welcome back to the world of podcasting.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've been really pleased with season 2, actually.
It's been really cool. I mean, looking at some of the guests you've had, a lot of folks are people you haven't actually worked with before in Trek. So, I'm curious what it's been like for you to get to know folks like Jack Quaid, like John Billingsley. A lot of these people you've probably seen at like conventions that you go to, but never really had to spend this kind of time with before.
Exactly. And it's been, when you sit on a plane and there's somebody who's really interesting who's next to you, that you just get in this very deep conversation and you find out about each other's lives, and you never see each other again sometimes, but that has a bit of what's been going on for me in season 2 with some of these people who, yes, I know them. We know, we see each other at all the Star Trek events. We've been in green rooms together. Sometimes we've been more involved in that, but it's great because I'm getting to know really who they are in that way, as if we were sitting in an airplane and I can ask them questions about their lives. And I do a lot of research about them all, which again, that's so much fun. I love researching what someone's done in their life and looking at their work, and also listening to other podcasts that they were on and listening to the questions that they've had time and time again. And what, of course, I'm sure you try the same thing. Can I ask a question that hasn't been asked before? It's very hard to do.
Yes,
and
it is.
Yeah, you can't possibly listen to everybody's podcasts. I mean, first of all, someone like Bill Shatner, I don't have enough time in the day to see every video that he's ever done. So you just, it's a shot in the dark. You have some questions, a lot of questions, and you see which ones are going to land. I always have much more material, and then I edit it down. So what I've learned, though, is the more material you have, the longer your edit is going to be. And now I'm learning, maybe don't ask quite so many questions.
Well, that's the beauty of editing. You get to ask all the fun stuff and then decide later what gets in there. I mean, I like that part personally because that's my background, but I totally get what you mean with that. And
What do you mean that's your background?
Professionally, I'm a video editor, full-time video editor and producer.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, see, and I love editing, and I've only had a chance to edit twice. Once was with Genesis, and the other was in Labyrinth. They let me do a bunch of editing, and then of course it got changed. But I love that process. I think it's like stage directing. I really dig it.
But it's kind of fun because as a podcaster, I mean, we are live editing. You basically said it. We have our list of questions. I'm sure even today, I'm not going to get through every single thing I want to, but we kind of have to then like live edit, change the story that we as the host are trying to tell with our guest. Do you find that to be like a fun challenge, or is that kind of like something that's been a little bit hard for you to wrap your head around?
Well, it's been both. There are times where I think the hardest part, the biggest discovery was that I talk too much and that I don't like the sound of my voice and that I have 100 tics that I wish I would get rid of. Other than that, I want to make the guests look really great. That's what I want. My podcast is not about some big scoop or anything. It's really about getting to know someone, making them feel comfortable and coming off really well. I want people to love them as much as I do, fall in love with them as I'm falling in love with them. Uh, so yeah, I've learned a lot. Um, and you have to, and I've made some mistakes. There's been times where I've gone, no, that was the wrong question afterwards. I think, why didn't I do this? And I should have, um, gone, swerved into another area. But I think that's also comes with experience. And I'm a novice. I'm really on a learning curve with this. You already, I can tell you are much more pro than I am.
I can fake it really well, I think, at this point now. And yeah, it's kind of funny to hear you say that, like, you don't like hearing the sound of your own voice. And that's when I talk to a lot of folks who want to do podcasting or they want to do YouTube, that's usually the number one reason that prevents them from moving forward with their projects or even just doing anything with it. And it's so funny to hear, like, and I listen to a lot of other celebrity run podcasts, and it's the same thing. I'll hear some of them say, like, I don't like the sound of my voice. I mean, meanwhile, we had Gilbert Godfrey, rest in peace, doing his show, and that man's voice, I mean, yikes, but I love his show. So, for you, what has it been like to kind of get over some of those fears and confront a lot of, I guess, podcasting is very much a one-on-one kind of thing. It's you and someone else. What's it been like for you to kind of just get your head around having to hear yourself, having to be part of this world, and working in this very different format than you've performed in for the last, entirety of your career?
Right. I think it's humbling, but I think it's good to be humbled, um, and to know that you're vulnerable, that you have a lot to learn. I think that's a great place to live in, every day, because it's when we think we know it all or know a lot that we stop learning, actually. And I know that I'm a neophyte on this. I know that I listen to every podcast and I go, oh, I could make it better here. And as long as I don't get in a well of self critique, self judgment, as long as you can be scientific and say, oh, gee, I should have done that there. Let me try that the next time. That's what I endeavor to do. Like, by the way, there's remodel going on in my house, so there's hammering happening.
A retrofit on the Enterprise. We'll just
That's
say
right.
that.
That's right. That's right. It's all meant to be in my interview here. I think that's the biggest thing. There's a lot of strength in feeling vulnerable if you allow that as a possibility instead of just feeling that vulnerability is weakness. So I feel when I notice myself get a little like nervous on the podcast, and it happens all the time. Even with friends, you sort of go, "Oh, where should I go? What?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But the more you can just like chill and go, it's okay, whatever. I'm not trying to prove how brilliant I am to the world. I'm trying to find out about this other person. And that's when I do my best work, is when I take it off of me. And I think the default is when I'm nervous, I just start chattering, you know. Uh, and when I'm focused, I can listen better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about being a host is the listening parts to be able to react. It is just like acting, really. It's all about reacting back and forth with who your scene partner is, and in this case, it's completely unrehearsed. You don't know what's going to happen next. It's pure improv at its finest.
I think it's always much better when you're live in the room together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I gotta say too, I'm glad you mentioned the word vulnerability a few moments ago because I really enjoyed the interview you just did in season 2 with Kate Mulgrew. And I've heard from a lot of folks she can be a tough nut to crack sometimes. She doesn't take fools lightly. And like your interview, just like from minute one, you were going into some heavy, serious stuff. Had you ever spent any time with Kate previously?
Not really that much. I mean, obviously we would, you're on the Star Trek cruise and you have a drink together or something like that. But no, we had not talked that much. But again, it would have been a different interview had I not taken the time to read both of her books and
Yes.
do the research. But it was a fascinating conversation. And it's scary to go into topics that you go, oh gosh, well, should we talk about this? But I figured let's just go with it. Everybody's been fascinating. I learned so much about John Billingsley that I didn't know, and I've spent a lot of time with him. But he's a fascinating man. Um, and I didn't know Jack Quaid or Tawny much at all. And
Yeah.
I just had a really strong connection with them. I think I love the younger generations so much. Maybe that's the mother in me, but I really do. And I find they are two sparkling, talented, bright people, and I loved that. And then there's someone like Rosalind Chow. To me,
Yeah.
what was upsetting there was we had a delay in our Zoom, and you must know this. It makes it
Oh yeah.
so much harder. You're speaking over each other, so you can't use that part because no one's going to understand the words. So that's the challenge. But my gosh, I have always wanted to talk with her. She's just she's really fantastic. And there's so many others, it's kind of like a selfish gift to be able to talk to them. I'm
That's why I
on,
do this show.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and folks definitely do check out Gates McFadden Investigates. It's been a really, really great season, and your hosting abilities as well. Definitely, I'm not. I don't. I feel like I'm such a like low life to say, oh, you've improved so much, but I can tell you've gotten more comfortable. Is what I mean. I think
Exactly.
you've really grown into this role, and I can tell you're having a great time doing this show. So
No,
thank you for giving us all these new stories of these people.
I appreciate that you said that. It means a lot, Matthew. Thank you very, very much.
Now, you do have some other projects you've done with Nacelle, which I'm going to talk about also in my intro and outro for this episode. But I do want to talk to you about Picard. We can't not talk about Picard this season.
Okay.
And I think in our last interview, we talked about how you said like you wanted to be back in Trek again. So here you are now in it one more time. Did you ever think this was how Beverly Crusher was going to return to the series?
No, not ever. I never thought this would be the way. I loved the story. I love Terry Matalas. I think he's a unbelievably great storyteller. He and his writing staff put together quite a story. So I found it thrilling to work on.
I'm curious to find out how much you actually knew about the entire season. Like, were you given the entire plot from episode one? Here's the series Bible, episode 1 to episode 10, or has it been for you like getting each week the sides and being like, oh, that's what's happening now?
No, we knew. I knew the arc of the character. I did know what the arc of the character was, and there were bits and pieces, in the details that I didn't know everything because there just wasn't. I didn't need to know every aspect of LeVar Burton's part or
Mhm.
whatever. But no, I knew the story. We were brought into it. We were well respected as actors. They Terry talked with us about. I wouldn't have done it had I not understood the arc of the character, and I
Mm.
loved the arc of the character. And he would listen to things that I would say, "Yeah, but what about this? And can't we?" He would listen. You didn't get everything you wanted, but as I say every podcast, the show is not called Crusher; it's called Picard.
True. And I do want to say, right now we're up to episode 308, so we're not going to discuss anything beyond that point because I don't want Paramount to break my knees. But I do want to come back to the episode you did in, the scene from episode 3, and that's the first time Beverly has a face to face with Picard, and it's all about her son. And it was such an emotional and like amazing scene to watch you two perform together. Like it was just theater. It was pure theater on stage in front of a camera.
Oh,
And, I know Star Trek shows don't normally have rehearsal time. I don't know if there was any in this case for Picard, but I'd love to hear what you remember from working on that day, having that first like real face to face with Patrick discussing their son.
oh, I was so looking forward to it. No, what the time was taken for the script, and just like a day, I lost some lines right 2 days before, and then I think even the night before there was a shift again
Hmm.
because it was going back and forth of whose argument was going to be seen as the righteous one. And I think Patrick at one point felt Beverly's arguments were too strong, and so it got certain lines that I wanted were taken out. But again, this was not a situation where I was crying in my beer because someone had taken out lines. I knew it was a good scene. I felt it was tough because Beverly's character had the most exposition, right? I had to get a lot of exposition in, and that was to me the challenge of it. No, I rehearsed on my own, and I think I think we read it standing there. We read it once, and then we were just put in those two places, and then we moved to where we felt we wanted to move. And yeah, I think we only shot it. We had to do then close up stuff like that, but basically we didn't spend a lot of time on it. We were both raring to go, so it was super fun that way. I loved that.
Yeah, it felt very organic. And yeah, the interesting also about this is you just kind of mentioned how the characters, one felt one was more righteous than the other. I feel like that's kind of been the season of Picard in a nutshell, where there's a lot of tough decisions and no one's necessarily making like the
Exactly.
right decision. Everybody has like a lot of motive to say this is the better option, but this is what we're going to do. It's almost like every episode is its own Kobayashi
No,
Maru
exactly.
to make
And
it more
that's
Trekky
what's so
sounding.
brilliant about the story that Terry Matalas is laying out. And here's where I feel in particular it is Star Trek. Even though Gene Roddenberry did not want conflict in Next Gen, and so the crew members rarely were in conflict, although Picard and Crusher were sometimes in conflict over the Prime Directive versus the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm, which I loved.
Yes.
That to me, I wish
Yeah.
I'd had much more of that actually, because by doing this kind of conflict that they have my character involved with this season, and also when Patrick and when she says, I think I'm losing my compass. I think what those are so powerful because hopefully the audience is relating to these characters and realizes it's one thing for us to just say, oh, well, you shouldn't do that, or she should have told Picard, and there's just, I'm not going to excuse it at all. You see, life is not like that. you There are circumstances, like, for example, who would I be to say about someone who was in the Holocaust, well, they shouldn't have done that. If they had taken me away in the middle of the night, I wouldn't have done this. Well, how can you possibly have, no one knows until they are in that situation. And if your child who you dearly love is being hunted for that long, you have post-traumatic stress and you're trying to hold it together. I think people in our society now need to learn how to stop doing these quick judgments, because ethics and
Yeah.
morality, yes, we should all try to always do the right thing for the greater good, but the characters in this season do that. They might be angry at each other and they might be in conflict, but they immediately almost turn and start to work together and collaborate. And when we do that as human beings, I believe we automatically start to forgive and we start to go forward. And that's what I believe happens in this show. All of us would die for the other characters. And that becomes giving love, actually. Not only are you giving your brain and expertise and all of that, but you're really doing things out of love. And it's like we should get off of right or wrong and look at the situation and see, how do you live with contradiction? How do you live with ambivalence? Because that
Yeah.
is life. And we are all trying to do the best we can, right? And the more we close off by just making these big judgments, like, no, a woman should not have the right over her own body. No. Or, you have to just sort of go, why am I so scared about this? Like, let's just listen. Let's just stay still. What if I tried to open up to that possibility that maybe I'm not right?
Yes.
That's what I love about this season. I really do. And I think it's action packed. Stay tuned. Have you seen through the end? Because stay tuned.
I've only been up to 308, and
No.
yeah, so
Oh
no
my,
spoilers.
no,
Again,
no,
want to keep
no
my kneecaps
spoilers.
where they
I'm
are, but
saying just hold on to your seat.
oh yeah, the momentum for the season has been amazing, and I do want to add too. Having just seen 308, the way the episode ends with basically the crew all together sitting in the ready room for the first time, all as a unit, it felt so amazing to see that. What's the environment been like on set, having the band back together and just getting to play again with all these fun, familiar folks you've worked with for so many years?
Well, by the time that we were all sitting around the observation lounge, the fun was, of course, being able to act opposite each other. That was great. And it was easy. I think all of us just fell right back into it. And because the script was so good, we weren't doing a script that was pretending it was like 35 years ago. We were doing a script that brought who we are also as older people. I've said this before. I loved that we were working with different generations so well. I loved that it was this sense of family. That was the biggest feeling, is it's a sense of family when we were sitting there. We really do care for each other. We really are close. It's a gift. Those friendships are a gift. Those working relationships are a gift. And all of the new people who have been cast in that show are amazing. They're so good. No matter how tiny the part, I loved getting to know these people. And then you have Jerry Ryan and Michelle Hurd, who are amazing. And Todd, oh my God, Todd just was fantastic. So sitting in that room. No, when you're in the observation lounge, it always means we're going to take longer to film because we have to get everyone in the shot. So it's like, how can we do this the fastest way? It used to take forever on the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
And also it was cold and during COVID. So we would always have to mask up. There weren't like
Yes.
shenanigans on the set in the same way. We would get into quiet conversations because you couldn't talk loudly. We didn't have trailers that were right there. We would drive to the set and you're there for hours and it's freezing. So it was different. When we did the Next Gen, our trailers were right outside. You could go out and be talking in your trailer and laughing and doing whatever. If you started laughing, and we did several times, they were like, shh, shh. So that's more what it was like. We had more fun, talking about it later.
So Gates, now again, like I said, I have so many more things I want to ask you, but we got limited time today. But I do have to ask one important thing here. Is this the final time Beverly's going to get her hypo spray out, or is she going to be hanging up the lab coat for good?
Oh, I hope she's not hanging it up for good. But, who knows? I hope that she's around. I did have a little something in Prodigy. I just did a video game with my space son, Will Wheaton, where it was the mirror universe. That was fun.
Oh, nice.
I know. I think that Terry would like, we all would like to have this legacy show continue where you could focus on different people at different times. It could be maybe not a full season every year. We've seen with White Lotus how you can do 6 episodes and it can just be brilliant. You do the number of episodes you need to. So I hope not. I feel I am so ready to do something else with her, or I'll play a Klingon. I mean, it's just exciting. If the story and the script are good, I'm happy. I don't care what character I'm playing. I'm happy. And yeah, so that's about all I'll say. I'm not hanging. First of all, I have no lab coat. They were so protective of every item on that set. I wish I could say, well, I'm hanging up my, one of my incredible costume jackets.
Your wardrobe is beautiful this season.
Oh my God. And it's really amazing. I coveted those jackets, but they're all in the Star Trek Paramount museum place, whatever. Thank you so much for this great chat. I've really enjoyed it, Matt. You're wonderful.
Thank you, Gates, and congratulations on all your success with the podcast and everything else you're doing over at Nacelle. And I'm loving all the performances you've done on Picard this season. It's been an amazing season, so I'm so happy getting the band back together to have one more performance together. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Matt. Be well.
Have a good day.
You too.
Cheers again to Gates McFadden for joining us this week to talk about her podcast and to talk about Picard. An amazing time as always. It's just such a great thing I get to do on this show, and I get to talk to folks like Gates who've done so much in the world of Star Trek and now around the world of Star Trek too. So again, a reminder, check out Gates McFadden InvestiGates wherever you listen to podcasts, and also check out The Center Seat, 55 Years of Star Trek in book form, in DVD form, and on streaming media. And a reminder, I will have links to all the many things Gates is involved in with the Nacelle Company in my show notes and in the description on YouTube below. Once again, if you're not already, please follow Trek Untold on social media, at Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and now at TikTok as well. And please make sure to subscribe to us, whether you're listening to us on audio platforms or watching this episode on YouTube. Thank you again to my Patreon supporters for helping to make this and every episode happen each and every week. If you want to learn how to become a Patreon supporter yourself and get some of the cool perks that they're already getting, check out patreon.com/trekuntold. I'd love to have you there. And you don't need to be a paying member to join Patreon, by the way. There's still plenty of free updates as well. So until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold. And remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com. Promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the RageWorks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.